Okay,
good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul McLaughlin. I'm Vice Chair of the Conservation Heritage Advisory Committee. The committee set up to advise the City Council on heritage and listed building aspects. Start the agenda. Do we have apologies?
We do. Chris Toomey, Carol Craven, Max Craven, Councillor Smale and Chris Walton.
Thank you. Any late items to be introduced? No, I've not been advised of any. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? No. Good. Minutes of the last meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't here, so I can't say one way or the other, but do I have a proposal? Yep, Ian Goodwin. Yeah. And I'll second that. David Thanks. Thank you. Next item is items determined since the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments on any of the items determined since the last meeting? I think there was just one worthy of note where we looked at solar panels on the roof of they were removed and subsequently the application was approved. Applications not being considered today. Anybody got any comments on that? The applications not considered? No. Okay. So moving on to the main element of the meeting, applications to be considered. So first on the agenda is number 7, Marketplace. Now you'll recall that this has been before the ground floor only, which has an approval for A3. Sorry.
It was for a change of use basement from professional services to cafe restaurant or drinking establishment.
Yeah. Now that approval and one of the approvals has now lapsed, and one is about to lapse, but that's irrespective of this application. If they bring them back to us, then so be it. So we're looking specifically at the first and second floors, which are to be converted into apartments. So Chloe, can I ask you to?
Certainly. Just a little bit of clarification. The applicant does intend to include the ground floor use within the current application, and it may be that further new listed building application is submitted for the ground floor. So, in terms of the ground floor, in terms of changes to the already approved scheme, changes are relatively limited and are in respect of some changes only to doors. I should just say that we've had confirmation today that in the original application it was proposed to replace all the windows and add wall insulation. We've had an email to say that they now wish to not undertake those things, and they'll be looking at secondary glazing to all the windows. So this will be subject to the acoustic report, which is expected next week. So, as I mentioned, other than the approved plan, very limited changes to the ground. Just to remind you what the spaces look like within the building. There's a sort of front range which is much more architecturally, has a lot more architectural details, former banking hall and offices, and there's a rear extension which is a lot less decorative. You've seen an example of that, suspended ceiling, slide. So to the first floor, this just gives you a bit of an idea of the existing quality of that front range, the cornicing, and the joinery. Second floor, there is a few changes proposed, such as the slides. Sorts of list of existing. So this is the existing slide. The proposed slide has dropped off. So there were a number of changes being proposed in this first floor. So I will come back to the first floor to show you. So in terms of quality, these are the quality. Seen these online anyway. In terms of some of the details, on the second floor, there's a cupboard being proposed to be removed in one location, and quite an interesting system that is located within this area. There's a shaft, and there's a system in that location, and that's what the photograph, which is a perplexer. Within the second floor, there's an open balustrade to the first floor, quality cornices, door surrounds. That's the lantern or the light, roof light above, and more quality spaces.
Just while Chloe is doing that, Max has made a comment, not about the design, which he actually supports, but he said that the heritage statement said that it was designed by somebody, I can't remember who, but he said it was actually designed by Smith, for the Smith Bank, Smith Nottingham Bank, and built in 1871. So, a slight contradiction to the heritage statement.
So here are the first floor plans which you've seen online. So just zoom in slightly, just to run through proposals. Obviously there are a number of walls which show lining which no longer is proposed. So in terms of the proposal, there is a level of subdivision within some of these spaces of the rooms that front the marketplace. There is some existing and some new. So there are proposed new structural openings, obviously kitchens and the shower rooms being proposed. Once again, so I think subdivision and the new structural openings are the ones which I wanted to point out to you. There's also the blocking of some existing doorways. You can see one adjacent to flat 3's living room. This is the first floor in the viewing range. Once again, it's a lot less decorative, and once again, the main impact is to do with an extensive subdivision and shower rooms and the kitchen So that's a summary of the first floor on PAGS. In terms of the proposals.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chloe. Going back to what Chloe said in the first instance, it's good to hear that they have decided to keep the existing windows, to introduce secondary glazing, and to remove the wall lining, because there are quite a lot of distinct features and linings, door linings and architraves, cornices, and skirtings, which you can see is high quality there. And the high quality elements do seem to be towards the front of the building, which you'd expect, being a banking hall. And the rear section is of a lesser quality. Open it up to some discussion. Chris?
Yeah, well, it's an important thing and very prominent location. I think somewhere in the documentation, I read that it has been vacant, these floors have been vacant 7 years. You know.
Yes.
That's always starting to be worrying in terms of the effect that has on the future of the building. So it's welcome to see a proposal to use those. You know, very central. From what I could see, lots of the important, from what we've just heard, you know, lots of the more important elements will be changed. You know, so I particularly like that open balustrade, the gallery landing on
Yes.
on the second floor, and the roof light above it. You know, is a particular feature. Sort of quality, really, and you know, so on the basis that the use seemed appropriate and the inevitable subdivision of changing the doorways and so on, sort of all seemed fairly appropriate to me. So I couldn't really feel that there was anything that, you know, I felt ought to be resisted. It's a greater benefit to get it back in use, really. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think I was okay with it.
As far as the doorway bit that's being blocked up, are they going to do it in such a way as to sort of respect the former opening? You know, the door jam and just sort of fill the inside.
Well, I think one of the things that we would like to see, and we leave it down to the officer, it's some real detail as to how these junctions are going to occur against the detail, because what we want to do is make sure that that detail is preserved within the building and not disturbed. So it's technical detail really on how they're going to scribe around those zones.
It's like where a new wall abuts onto the corners. Is it going to cut into the corners, or is it going to respect the corners?
Exactly. Well, obviously there are issues in terms of fire resistance and sound between the two elements. So, but we have no detail relating to that at the moment, which I think is, you know, as you pointed out, it's quite an important. But there is a new party wall going in at first floor on the front, which actually goes right alongside the edge of the window. Now you see the window details there.
Yeah.
If it's going to interfere with something like that, then it needs adjusting slightly.
Just to answer your question, so the existing door will be shut on circular bonds. So this is what it says on the plan. It says the existing door will be blocked by keeping the door shut on the circulation space side and blocked up on the apartment side. to provide the acoustic and fire resistance. So that is the
So they keep memory of the opening that was there with the architrave. It's just the actual opening. The acoustic. That answers your question.
Yeah.
It was a repair schedule for all this. There was some repairs before.
not as
I'm confused maybe.
there was related.
Okay. So the small system was identified as obviously clearly quite old and quite historic. So we'd like to keep that preserved if possible. So I think generally subject to the officer's inspection of the appropriate details. Generally, we're in favour.
Chair, there was just one question that there was some reference in the paperwork to before we had news that they were going to use secondary glazing, that they were potentially going to replace the windows. And some mention somewhere that it said that it would be preferable to repair. Do the external windows, if you like, need to be repaired? Do they need any attention? Do they plan to do that? Oh, right.
Some peeling paint, very small localised repair. Stop it. So at least to repair those the secondary glazings.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome use then, and nice to see realistic proportions in the development as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So the next item is Miller's Loaded Barrels. Again, this has been before us before, and sure you recall, it was part of the Wadensmere development of the former DRI. That's now been sold off separately, and we've got a scheme to convert this into 14 apartments, which does retain the old, the extent, not so old, not as old as the main building. There are other elements as well. The conservatory is to remain in the form that it's in, but it's actually going to be rebuilt with different glazing. So we'll discuss both. The state of the interior of the building is extremely poor. You will have read the heritage statement, which was very comprehensive, very interesting. And there were some photographs in there that showed some of the condition. I think this is one of those buildings that we've been trying to get under repair for a long time and get a new use for it. So I think over to you, Chloe. Give us an explanation.
So, yes, if you remember, there was an early application to put an alternative to lead work on the roof to try and make sure the was really tight and so it could dry out. Subsequently, to a recent meeting, there's been an application to look at re-roofing, sort of last time. So that's replacing that lead alternative to slates. So really have a look at the external roof. It's thinner anyway. So in terms of the slides, just put a couple few together in terms of the differences between the approved scheme, which the Chair quite rightly said was submitted in 2018. Background, seeing kitchen details, just looking at the sort of landscaping, the demolition plan highlights the city anticipating phasing of development. So most of the internal interventions are later phases. So, as was mentioned, as the chair mentioned, the conservatory footprint for conservatory has been made since the 18th. So here is the southwest facing elevation, just focusing on the external impacts of the proposal. So as you can see, the later extensions to the left side of the slide, which are currently with the previously those were proposed to be this scheme, and that proposed to be retained and a roof added. So to the rear, the side. Some photographs just showing you what it looks like. So these drawings just show that 3-story and the extension to create these 3 stories on that back wing of the building. So here we've got the existing floor plan. The one to the top right shows the previously approved plan and the now proposed. As has been mentioned, the units on the approved scheme was 10, and now it's now 14. This is because of the intention of what was going to be demolished. So the ground floor, it's gone up from 2 units to 7. First floor, it's gone up 1 unit, and the second floor with an extra unit to the within the roof space. That's where the changes lie. The other main change is an internal staircase being created. So here is the area. So as I said, there's some quite quality spaces in the original building, which has been has sadly declined in condition. And these are examples of photographs that you've seen by some new to you, just showing the quality of the internal spaces where that staircase is proposed, which is in the centre. In terms of the conservatory, I'm just obtaining some photographs showing the current detail. So it's on a brick plinth, it's got rendered on the outside. It doesn't and the proposal is to construct a conservatory on that same footprint. But as you can see, it looks like there's limited windows. There are sash windows proposed to the southeast facing windows. So, as I was unable to go in by the Smith team with slides which will show you the current state or the state of everything. These photographs were taken in 2018. This was just to give you a flavour of the quality that was inside, and I hope that temporarily taken away the water time to stop. However, it is thought that the condition may have been declined further, and there is concern about floor structure, and they're yet to submit the condition survey and clarification the extent of floor repairs. So to the first floor, once again, it's the staircase. There's a change along with the retention of that. Main stairs with a mix subdivision proposed. Showing the existing proposal that we have to show. The now proposed second floor plan. Within the new extension, top of the two-storey, just a section through just to show the details of that. The lodge is also included within the proposals. It's thought to have been partially rebuilt in the past, according to the heritage statement. So the existing stations show very little proposed to these issues, apart from an extension in this area, a pitched roof rather than flat roof, and the extensions proposed right up to the front boundary wall. To the east facing, as you would have seen, instead of a single door, there's a double door proposed. Inside, the reason for the extension to the previous extension is to house a staircase from up to the first floor. Perhaps just to show you the simple zone. See the spaces.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. Yeah, so effectively we've got three elements to consider here. Firstly, there are repairs to the existing building, which is extremely important. Now, going to clean the exterior of the building and do stonework repairs. I think is a real positive. The extension to the second floor space is part of that, and the reconfiguration of the different materials. That's to avoid the conservatory element. I think is also something we need to consider. And then the third part is of course, the lodge. It's a relatively simple building. Want to put an extension on the side with a hip roof on it. That small extension takes the proportion of the existing single extension on that side, but it comes right forward to the boundary wall. So that's something else to consider. So, can I open it up for some discussion?
I was going to echo Chris's comments about the previous scheme. This scheme's been sat there for a few years now.
Indeed, council.
So really, it's to be commendable, isn't it? I think Max has been involved with it for a few years as well. I think he's been involved in getting something sorted. There are a few interventions there, but I think in balance, you know, when you consider what they're taking on there, it's not a great deal.
No, I agree. I think if they can restore as it was, and we've got photographic evidence, Lane hallway, I think that would be absolutely fantastic and give a flavour of the quality that building would have. The rest of it has been so badly vandalised. I think whatever quality detail they can reintroduce into the spaces would be better.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the second floor in the roof space on the former extension? It actually takes away some of the hierarchy of the main building, but being in recess, I think towards the back, I don't think it actually.
You see it's in relation like that, natural fact, as you say, it's
Yeah, so I really like that. It all helps get this building restored.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Similar to the comment about conservatory.
it's a surprise they've bothered with the conservatory.
It provides 2 bedrooms.
Well,
But yeah, I mean, to call it a conservatory now, in this scheme, it's not. I feel a little bit uncomfortable with the proportions, even though it's one of the proportions of glazing. I think ought to respond to the addition rather than to the main building. I think that would be a more delicate approach.
So could there, I don't know whether it's shown like that or whether it's been, but is it proposed to be brick all the way around? I was thinking that if you change the windows level all the way around, you change that, say, to a different material, perhaps boarding or something, so it sort of maintain that band of different contrasting material.
Well, I think it's intended that it is brick base and render.
Let's render that straight round. Just so that you could see what it would look like.
So I'm more concerned with the proportion of the window.
Yeah, I think. I think what he's trying to do is just trying to line them up with the windows above.
Yeah, clearly.
But
and because
it doesn't actually work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work that way, does it?
No.
well, it doesn't work because you've got that central line.
Yeah.
Seems to get, so am I right in thinking that the windows that are
45 degrees, yeah.
Yeah. So it just can't line up, can it?
No, it can't. As Paul said, you could probably put the windows in the middle of the facets rather than, you know,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just need to have
It's just a detail.
more delicately.
Yeah.
I think I'd be happy to leave that with the officer to see if we can get a better piece of design out.
Yeah.
And then we go on to the lodge. So we've got the you can see on the photograph top right the extension back. Now that extension is a head and pull right forward. You can see the articulation of those piers front adjacent to the wall. That wall is actually in Max's heritage statement actually acknowledges part of the original boundary. Piers to the right of it, I don't think, are. My thoughts on this is that I've got no objection to the extension being inserted, but I feel it ought to be set back at least to the depth of the pier return on the front. So, yeah. Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
So,
Otherwise, I think it's improvement.
yeah, in summary, no objections, subject to clarification of details on woods as well on the conservatory, and to recess that section. Anything else you need to point out on that?
I don't think so. The next one was specifically just read.
Please,
read
yeah.
quickly, 'cause I'll have to have a separate- This is a separate response. So this is to do with this the extent as known, so far known, of the stonework fares. So, and the proposal is to take some junction with the properties, to take some cleaning, so they can see where it needs repairs. So it's just really just to highlight that that's the extent of the repairs. And there is a method statement that has been submitted in terms of the method of the cleaning.
It's actually a DOF system cleaning, which is recommended. The drawing that Chloe showed us with all the red notes is regrettably the full extent of the schedule for repairs. Now, I think there are a lot of repair works that need to be done on that building. I think a slightly more detailed document would benefit not only the contractor who's going to do this work, but also the officer to see what is actually going to take place. Have some sort of specification alongside that. Because this building, the only elements that are left of any historic character is the exterior. And if that's not done right, we're going to end up with a reflection of the original building. I think a little bit more detail ought to be requested.
As you were seeing, there is a restoration specification online. But yes, I would normally expect a bit more detail than this came in without program. So you'd normally look at elevation, maybe change it to show these sorts of jobs. It's often that they won't be the full extent till it's all scaffolded and you can actually look at it. So maybe then if it's also wanted to grant permission, then something that could be conditioned.
Conditioning, yeah. Good. So the next item on the agenda is Friargate Goods Yard. You recall the pre-app presentation that Nancy Nichols and Waynesmere did for us. Now followed that up with an application. They've taken on board some of the stuff that we mentioned at the time. Particularly in terms of curvature of some elements of the buildings, the new build that is. We obviously are going to concentrate on the modern warehouse and the engine house, engine shed. I'll have to just point out, Historic England have actually come back with some comments which I think are worth just trying to give you a resume. They are asking for further information on materials, details, applications in relation to the list of buildings and the residential development. They are concerned about the removal of brick partitions in the office area of the bonded warehouse, you call curved triangle section. There's quite a bit of removal of partitions there, so they're concerned about that. They're concerned about timber cobbles still exist potentially underneath. And they suggest that alternatives should be explored to incorporate WC's staircases required into the existing partitions instead of constructing new partitions. They also expressed concerns about platforms and the retention thereof, because there are elements of those platforms still there. The windows and the timber cobbles, the windows on the main elements of the building, they are metal windows, but on the officer's side, they are timber sash. Now, the applicant wants to be consistent with one particular type of window, which involves some alteration to the reveals the office windows, which Historic England are against, and I have to say I feel uncomfortable about that as well, to do with. They want to have an increased understanding of the impact of the proposed roof structure on the historic fabric. As you recall, the roof structure is basically all been burnt away. It's a new roof structure. And potential loss, intervention of the new structure. With regard to the engine house, they welcome the installation of the new stairway around the accumulator. You call the accumulator stands in the tower, and they want to see it structurally capable that would be able to carry that. They need some more structural information relating to the roof, and they don't. There's not enough clarification. Elements of the existing roof structure still exist, so they want full justification. There are 16 roof lights in the roof, and they feel that this is in excess of what is needed. They need further justification. The scheme proposes the potential for repairs to the existing windows, but they require, again, more information related to which windows. Detailed text. And if the windows can't be repaired, information on the replacement. On a more fundamental basis, the landscaping between Bonded Warehouse and the engine house, they feel separates the two buildings too much, which I think reflects comments that we made previously about the landscape. So they want the applicant to explore alternative means of landscaping to reduce that potential. With regard to Friargate Bridge and the abutments, they acknowledge that Friargate Bridge is not within the ownership of the proposal allows for potential connection between the site and the bridge in the future. It was advised during pre-application further discussions would be required before the bridge can be incorporated into any future scheme. It's advised that these discussions are held to ensure that development to restore the bridge, the use are carried out contemporaneously. The proposal should not affect the sustainability and viability of the bridge for future long-term use. What I have in mind for the bridge, I have no idea. So they understand the difficulty of developing the site with the existing blue brick abutments in place. Their loss constitutes harm and requires justification. So they're asking for further information, robust viability assessment to demonstrate the extent of loss and the need. They accept that there may be some loss, but it needs to be justified. Then they talk about materials again, the historic cobbles, the linking elements, like foundation for the hydraulic crane, such things, and the hard landscaping to reflect the character and appearance of the development. So I think that roughly sums it up, Chloe. Historic England's view. If you'd like to give us your resume now.
Obviously, there's a lot of information in relation to this patient, and I'm obviously going through it all here, seeing it online, so I'm just going to try and through this. I don't know if you'd like to stop at certain points. Or
Yes,
whether you
please.
just want to finish it at the end.
Yeah, if you can break it into elements, that makes it more understandable.
Okay. So, three listed buildings, Reigate, so Bonded Warehouse, engine shed, obviously the abutments are attached to Reigate. Obviously, private conservation areas, key views into the site from Reigate, and key view getting picked up with the information across the site. Tower. So there's quite a lot of heritage statement, some recording documents for both the Bonded Warehouse and Junction. So you'll see in these and what was previously on this site. So the proposal is for residential development and convert the Bonded Warehouse and engine shed to pubs, to food office space, etc. And to partially demolish the abutments to the bridge. So I'm going to go through Bonded Warehouse, go through each of the buildings in turn. Hopefully we'll be able to everything as we go through and I'll stop and then see if you have anything. If there's anything else at the end you also want to add. So you're aware of current condition of the warehouse from historically, just wants to show you the spaces and the roof form which you picked up in terms of the slate roofs. That runs the some was number of light installed, and you can see that in the pictures. What's in the floor with where the hoist is stored. So the light right through the building. Here's the end of the building, and as you can see, the vertical sliding structure. In the building, press the top, and you can see there are elements of the platform still structure, but a lot of it is no longer. There's also proposed at the moment within basement and the linking tunnel from Great Northern Road. I'm just to show you what's there, and we might have so we the work, so these are the proposal. You'll note on plans there's a number of repairs proposed on the Great Northern Road, just the road side of the building. It's proposed glazing and signage. The proposal is to reinstate two of the timber posts. The other elevation facing the site, there's 4 new openings at ground floor level for classroom. So just looking at proposals in terms of the existing demolitions plan. Obviously, there are some divisions in former offices area which are proposed to be removed. Here, proposal you've seen in terms of taking structure and working with that. There's a proposal for a light well, which is full height. So we've got the ground floor, first floor and mezzanine. So within this part of the building is space, offices, out spaces, toilets, lifts, staircases, etc. To the roof, PVs are proposed, 2 lift overruns. Just a section through showing it's proposed to be 3 floors generally. So ground first in bonded way across itself instead of the 2 that were originally there. And then some of the visuals which you've seen, so you can clearly see the 3 floors. How it's going to work. Obviously the steps leading up on 2 fronts up to the warehouse. So,
so yes, quite clearly a very big scheme for the just highlighting the concerns that Historic England had got is relating to the offices area and removing the brick partitions. And I think I echo their view in that respect, because any existing structure really ought to be retained as much as possible. And also wonder whether those sections of wall got any bracing characteristics for those anyway. structural engineers. So open it up for discussion.
Well, I'd like to open by saying that I would like to congratulate the architects on a massive project, and the developers as well. It's been sitting there for the last half century. Gradually, in fact, it's a testament to 19th century engineering that it's still there, despite everything that's been thrown at it. I mean, there are obviously elements of detail we probably will discuss. Personally, I'm not too concerned. It should be retained or can be retained.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But I mean, as far as the platforms are concerned, surely it's really helpful.
No, I share your view on that, David. I think because the platforms are really, there's very little of it left. And sake of creating an entertaining space within that building, which picks up on the railway, the imagery of the railway very well. I think. So I'm not concerned about that. I also welcome the reintroduction of the Lucums in a modern interpretation, which I think is good to do. The only thing that I would echo is the wholesale removal of those petitions and the different windows proposed. Originally, timber windows in the section you can see at the central photo, which I think should be put back as timber windows in offices. And the metal windows down the side, if they're capable of being restored, it's fine, but a metal window replacement down there, I think, would be possible. What we don't want to do is cause more hardship for this scheme, because we seem to be moving forward, as you say, Dave. 50 years the scheme. I bought the scheme 40 years ago. And those officers, I remember going in those offices when they were still habitable.
Oh, really? I've never been inside.
Eight Tailby and Co.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, the only could come at a time was that is no reference mentioned platforms on the external audit. There isn't any reference to the railway on there at all. And I've seen if you're taking children around to see the building, it might be quite useful to have some reference to the way it used to operate. I don't mean as far as keeping the platforms, but perhaps just in the finishes that they use.
Quite
You know, there's ways of showing that. I know when they did the Silton, you could see where the flume used to be. You know,
Very few people realise it.
yeah, very few people realise, but it's good for when you're showing children around to show them how it
we'll
is.
come on to the sort of landscape
Yeah,
and main things.
yeah.
Did you have cotton?
No, I'm quite comfortable with the roof. The roof at the moment doesn't exist. So it's it doesn't project above the parapet. So I think you are going to get a view from it as you come down Lara Croft Way and so forth.
Yeah.
But it is limited and it's a gentle pitch. There are solar panels on there as well. I think you have to accept that it's the
I mean, they obviously want to create a light and airy space. I don't know what else. The roof lights are too big.
Oh,
that's
sorry,
not that's on the engine house.
Oh, on the engine now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh.
Well, I can only welcome, I mean, echo what David said about the way that the balance of exercise thing. And, it was good that they did come in and have a pre-application discussion with us and have responded to that to a degree, you know. It was good, and that was a very positive aspect of it. It is an important big building. It's great to see this might be coming back into use in very much a lot of the way, really. Accept so, thank you for reading out, Chair, the the comments there.
Well, it was fairly hot off the press. So
And as you introduced it, you said, well, there's a lot of comments there, and there are. But like you, I wouldn't want to prohibit this being able to proceed. They're all things that I think should be put to the and they can consider them, but it might not be possible to do everything.
Yeah.
See, already you can see that they're doing enough to retain the heritage side. I agree about the platforms and so on. I think Ian's right. And sometimes you just include in the scheme, some inside the building. There can be, the displays on there which are always very interesting, aren't they? Yeah, sort of older photographs or whatever. They just bring its history alive. So yeah, it's great to see such a huge structure. Actually, survive.
Yeah.
Also, very much positive about the whole thing.
Yes.
I mean we mentioned a lot of stuff when we did have that discussion. 2 meetings ago, 3 meetings ago, I can't remember. And I'm sure we did mention the importance of the integration of the bridge and making that a destination in town. Right, I'm not sure they've worked that out really yet. It's not necessarily entirely their responsibility, But I don't think anything they're doing is going to stand in the way of something more being made of the bridge and just bringing the site back into use. And
Well, they've got these 2 big staircases.
Yeah.
Otherwise, don't go anywhere.
No.
So,
Well, no, they're sort of hamstrung a little bit because
quite.
Yeah.
development on the other side of the road
That's right.
forms a very definite full stop.
Yes. Well, that was another reason I objected. It didn't happen the way supposed.
To the engineers.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to mention?
That's okay.
Yes, please.
So, just some slides that you've seen online in terms of those 2 to the window. Side. So you'll see the smart money show. So a little bit of alteration in terms of changes proposed in the structure So, it's actually not the first floor level. So, it's a full height for anything we've seen. Some part of the building, meeting rooms, offices, etc. So, degree of subdivision. You also discussed at the application stage the incorporation of a staircase around the Victor Tower. So I think that was something that was discussed and mentioned at the stage. It's actually slowly seeing identified as to the extent of the roof structure has been retained and what it's been. That's shed.
Okay.
Summary.
So the elements on the engine shed, I think the interpretation of the interior spaces, the use of the accumulator tower for vertical circulation, the expression of double height space, void, I think is all very clever. Well done.
Yeah.
The roof lights, you've got 8 down each side. I do feel is a little bit overkill. So they could potentially be reduced down, and I think English Heritage referred to that as we mentioned earlier. But it wasn't uncommon to have inline roof lights in a building like this. So I think my observations on it is that if you had 2 miss one, then another 2 miss one, like that, I think that would be sufficient.
Would it look better if they were continuous with glazing bars in between? Like
A continuous.
yeah, that's just perhaps just one down.
Yeah, potentially it could, but then you got a long glaze strip in the roof, which is sort of
Like sort of flexible.
yeah the vent. Yeah.
I'd have thought they'd have gone to start with, just line them up with the windows. You know, but
Yeah, potentially so. And
this end there.
yeah,
That.
yeah, if you're on the drawing, you know,
Yeah, the scale is such that it doesn't really yeah. So I think that
Yeah.
the windows to restore.
have we got an end user for this building? Well, it looks like it's been designed for an end user, doesn't it?
No, they came before. I think it was yeah. They were starting the business.
They did mention.
It looks it's been designed for somebody particular.
Which is fine, yeah. Which we need to consider that. Oh, is the roof structure, that was it. There are apparently elements of the roof structure that still exist. And I think a structural engineer needs to look at it. And if the pattern of that roof is such that it still works and responds to the scheme that they've got, then I think that's a path to follow. I I still think that sort of green post arrangement they're showing there is quite attractive and works well. Thank you, Claire.
So moving on to the next, which is the bridge abutments, so vision bridge abutments to Highgate Station on top of the abutments adjacent to the bridge and the entrance. So the stairs up to the station platform. So very little still. Railway lines of long gone. So those lines in obviously is a key use of the Highgate conservation area into the city. So there's a kind of a condition that so the extended continuity into the site. Part of this report goes through in detail. Some have collapsed and some haven't. It's quite far limited to the extent the arches that they are. It's a demolitions plan showing the extent, which is pretty much everything apart from a couple of brick arches in terms of the wall behind it, a small section on the side, and these are the stone. You'll notice the detail of the condition report, which talks about some issues of waterproofing. The structure shouldn't be able to alternative. Here the elevations, just showing the extent of the wall which is proposed to be retained. Showing the extent of the arches. Inside the arches themselves, there's a number that still contain these basalted structures within. Just to give a visuals already in terms of the stepped arrangements and landscape. And the extent of the wall being retained.
That's less being cut back on the right hand side.
What's on the line? So this is the extent of the wall being retained up to the.
Oh right, so
up to the
yes, sorry, yeah.
On that side.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the stone part.
Yeah.
So
Now it looked more on the 3D image than it did on the
right. Yeah, so that gives you a bit of an idea about the extent of the walls proposed to be retained. So what's being proposed here is a limited amount being retained, obviously the difference in levels, and there's a creation of a different level. So there's access at the top part, and there's a proposal for a facade of gable end of this. Um, also within the documentation, does talk about the reclamation strategy aims to repurpose existing structures, materials, and incorporate them back into the proposal. The exact details of where they're proposing to reuse granite sets, not stone, etc. Is unknown. I think relocated the crane base. Escaping.
It's in the central court.
Yes.
What is that, the top right?
It's an old base to a hydraulic crane. And what they're intending to do is locate that. I mean, into the centre where we said there's like a square.
Yeah.
It's a triangle.
Yeah.
So that's a summary of the
Okay.
is everything.
So there is considerable loss here. Second scheme, seemingly. Yeah. There is an engineer's report identifies that quite a lot of damage has occurred within the interior of the arches. Quite a lot of bulging as to when that took place. Nobody can really tell. Some of it's really historic, some of it's just been left in a state of dereliction. So clearly, historic England got reservations about it. Do your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because I used to work in the grain warehouse in Perth. It's a very similar restoration project to the London warehouse, actually. And on that one, they managed to maintain the arches, you know, underneath a bridge, and they were well used by our small businesses, you know. So, you know, it is a shame that we couldn't incorporate something like that into that scheme. I can understand it comes quite a long way into the side, doesn't it?
It does come into the site quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from the angle that we're looking at it there, I think is probably gives a good impression. But it's when you're walking up Friargate,
Yeah.
you're not going to see that's
those
conservation
views.
area. Yeah, those views.
It is.
And also, I have to say, the change in level and the cobbles that exist at the moment, that's going to become a road. I'm concerned that we lose those cobbles for the sake of tarmac.
Yeah.
So I think we need to make note of that to see. At the moment, I think.
What did they say?
Tarmac.
When you had you mean, because I wasn't at that meeting, so what did they say then? Did they say that they needed to do that as part of the scheme that meeting?
At that point, they actually hadn't done a structural assessment. They still wanted to remove. Was it to that extent, Chloe?
Yeah.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. Because we got a bit hung up on the steps and the accessibility to the bridge, etc. Yes.
So they're talking about reusing stone sets.
Well, there is a reclamation statement in there, and they're trying to reuse as.
And also reusing blue bricks.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure where or
I think, although it doesn't actually say, that facade that you can see up there, the end gable,
Oh, is that going to be?
that's going to be in blue bricks. Or
in blue bricks, whether it's going to be the reclaimed blue bricks, we don't know.
And so, how many say successfully?
Well, we'd suggest that there's enough if I to do that.
What I would like to see is some interpretation included. So that this it says that visualise what had been there.
Yeah.
So I think ideally, Paul, I think what we're saying is that we'd like to get the arches really, if it had been starting from scratch with the design. But presumably because of the cost of keeping them and also the amount of space that you lose for residential,
Well, I think that's
it doesn't add up, does it?
they don't want to lose.
Well, no. But I think if that's the case, then they need to put forward a structural and economic justification.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. I think from our point of view, as a committee, I think we'd like to see that.
I would like to see it. How do you feel about the aesthetics of that gable, given the image at the moment is the timber shed?
Well, I wasn't at that other meeting, so I've got to be careful what I say because I have
No, we didn't see that.
I have a problem with the whole design philosophy because it's basically an industrial housing scheme, isn't it? This is, and yeah, that's the way it's gone. I'm not sure that's the right design philosophy as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So I've got to sort of step out of that and let you guys, you know.
I actually think because they follow essentially the lines of the old railway.
Yeah.
I think there is, and the interpretation of railway cottages, for want of a better description, in a modern way.
Yeah.
I think that works quite well.
Yeah. It's a very safe way. Exactly. You know, I mean, it's from a heritage point of view, which is what we're here for, isn't it, really?
Well, they could have stuck another bonded warehouse for the flats.
But it's just very, everything's very straight. Oh, you know.
That's the way.
There's one curve on it. It's not curve.
Yeah, we introduced that curve.
And we also wanted a curve in the middle, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Well, it does rather, if you see the plan, it does lend itself to two crescents, doesn't it, really? I mean, you know.
I think we've moved on.
Yeah, I realise that.
They said they didn't want to lose one unit.
Yeah, just to obviously the views from Friargate, either side of the bridge, and this view to the bonded warehouse that was talked about. And obviously you to the north of the bridge. Obviously, just to clarify, in terms of the plan on screen, this gable end is quite close to, which is quite close to Friargate itself. So yeah, we didn't see this detail. We were, I think, at the last meeting, unsure how the different levels would work. Obviously, here's the stonework art, which is off this.
Well, perhaps it would be nice in stone. As a reflection from what Friargate, stone up the sign, that is in stone.
I think the point is more here that that gate is actually going to have an impact on the Friargate concept.
Yeah. That's why I say we're doing better in stone.
I mean, I think it could interpret the station in some way. I think that's the station. So. Of course, that was the entrance to the station, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
We could, in some way, hint at the station rather than rather odd looking, to my mind, very odd looking again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is to cut that end block back significantly, and you retain the arches.
And that would
They wouldn't want to live
that would have some.
Why won't it?
So we're not comfortable with that, Chloe.
So it's the elevation.
It's the elevation and the proximity, closeness to. And we also made comments about the cobbles as well. Because I
There's a
really,
concern about
sorry, about the loss,
the loss.
and the road that goes up.
Do road engineers allow cobble areas?
Well, if they're there already, they can't object. I mean, it's not a road as such, it's more of a sort of secondary access.
It's been.
But-
It's
It's cobble surface could be retained and restored, I think. The idea.
It's the impact on the conservation, the Friegate conservation.
It's the interface between the two.
It is, and you've got that memory of the railway, the commons. And it's what people remember, so. I think it's an important, that's a surface texture. Yeah.
Were there any comments about the 3 stories?
Yeah.
Even if they pushed it further back, or is it just to do with the materials and the
No,
layout and
it's-
location?
It's the scale of it, closeness to Friegate. Because in reality, that's only going to be 10 meters. So it is going to be quite a prominent element on Friegate. If we were looking at a new build on Friegate, then that's not the sort of thing.
No,
This is where your problems start. Yeah, because you've got this sort of industrial type housing coming up to a Georgian street, really.
yes. Well, you wouldn't have a gable fronting to this.
No, I feel it needs to go further back.
Chair, or consider the materials as mentioned. If it was stone, it just needs to be softer, doesn't it? You know, that view from,
It's got a
From
good sort
a-
of transition, isn't it,
yeah,
between.
there's got to be some sort of,
Yeah,
Yeah,
transition.
moving from that,
Yeah.
like you say, that sort of Georgian,
Georgian.
stone
Yeah.
facades, and then this sort of more industrial.
I think most of the houses are brick. With one or two
They're not
exceptions.
blue.
They're not, no, red
No.
brick.
So you've got the stone return in there, and then the blue brick, and the transition to get to more industrial elements is quite noted. And from an architectural point of view, I can see that would be a solution, but I don't think in this case it's the right solution, given its proximity to Friday. Maybe plus a gable, but certainly a lesser. Yeah. Yeah.
Stafford Street. And on the overall plan, there's an apartment block which is set slightly back from Stafford Street. It's the plan showing its position. It's a 4-story block. Here are the elevations. Materials are bronze effect, metal roof and panel, bronze effect, stainless steel roof, structural panels, as well as the frame to windows and side brick. It's a visual. Brickwork to ground floor and Really simple application information. Couple of paragraphs just to show this context is proposed context. That one.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. So you've got 2-story villas, which have been converted to a code on the left hand side. And these are apartments, aren't they?
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
yes,
is there
yes.
offices?
Sorry,
I was
apologies.
just- yeah. And then you've got the brickwork and the bronze with that sort of mansard roof. Any observations?
It does.
Historic England have, because it's really outside they've got no issues with this.
They've tried to detail it, haven't they?
It's actually each
And break up
Certainly.
the bulk and the massing of the building. And, I think it's probably okay there.
Better than most of the flats that have been thrown up recently. Yeah. I was just saying, it comes to me, it reminds me of Police House in Parliament Street.
It's
A little bit.
I think that's where it's
Is that where it's come from?
Bit of flavour of that.
I wonder, because, yeah, it is broken up into elements, but I wonder whether it ought to have a bit more layering and a bit more. The corner, that's, it's almost asking for a turret on the corner, rather than that rather awkward mansard that just appears.
Yes,
And
You are going to see this obliquely as you go down Stafford Street. Yeah, I'm not entirely comfortable with it as a piece of design. I think it needs to respond probably slightly more to the villas, have a little
Yeah.
bit more division.
it could, oh, sorry. Well, the cladding on that roof, on that mansard is it copper or bronze? Yes. I mean, the alternative is to bring it down to the bottom of the windows and break it up into two.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to actually help it. I think that's just going to make it look like
Make it heavier.
and make it box on top of a.
Make it heavier.
That's it.
And put a corner, as you say.
Yeah. I think if something were done with that corner and that element, that whole corner block as you come down Stafford Street, then I think that maybe the tower on the engine house on that corner.
Yeah. That's the point, isn't it? Should it have picked up on the Italianate design
It
that
could do.
they use for the engine?
I could accept the sort of the dormer
And it's-
arrangement down the side, just that corner.
It's just got, there's no reference to anything else on the.
No,
the
No,
side,
no,
is
it's a
there?
very
Well, it's not.
standalone.
You know, look,
It's not really far from that.
that side, no. It's true, yes, as well. So I was thinking as a designer, you know, looking at these bits like it's right, sort of try and tie them together, don't you? Yeah.
Because you come in from Friday,
Mm.
Georgian, and you've got the development on the apartments on the right hand side, which are very traditional. And then you're straight into this. And then you're back to poor quality rendered, but they are small scale.
I think we've got to pick our battle for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't
If we're going to get,
want to object to it.
no,
If they
So
wanted
it's
it's,
to,
it's a side.
To make a statement.
if they wanted to prove it. Fine.
So it's down to
So just
We'd all have our different ideas.
Oh, that's it, that's right.
Right. So just for clarification, there's no there's no issues with height, scale, massing, layout, materials, or its relationship with its context.
Apparently not.
That's the trouble, isn't it, probably?
I've got a few slides regarding the wider site. So that's the next section of it. As you've already seen, rows of houses, a living form, that's been added, as you've noted. There's a number of house types, 2 and 3 storey. The predominant material is brick, different colours, tones of brick, with a tiled roof. There are some different that you see. And as we discussed previously, the window proportions and vertical emphasis. So just running through quickly, you can see the consideration such as the private up to some flat roof, some gable end, some straight, and other back to back flat roof. Here's a section through the site showing the height of things as through 2 stories in relation to the block. The bottom one is to do is in relation to a number of different visuals which are contained within the vision pack in terms of the size of the different house types, and also in terms of the landscaping. But that was the summary of what you've seen, just a prompt and further discussion on the layouts and house types.
Thank you. Ian, you have to get this one off.
Well, I've said one. So it's the design philosophy is obviously to blend in with the London layout. Really, it's definitely an industrial type aesthetic, and it's a solution that works. It's safe, but I just feel it's a bit monotonous. Some of those terraces are quite long. It could have been. It just for me. It just needed to be softened up a little bit more. Somewhere. It looks very stark to me. But it's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I sort of disagree with you. I really like it. I think they've gone to a lot of trouble to break up these long terraces with different house designs, different brick shades, different roof arrangements, and I think that they're giving it a really nice sort of urban village feel to me. And I look at some of the visuals, it actually happened like on there. Well, mind looking at them myself. So, not sure I'm right. Yeah, but anyway, that's my personal.
Chris,
I think it's unashamedly urban and the industrial, and it sort of reflects the heritage of the area and the city. I think I'm okay with the approach that we've got.
Yeah, no objections at all. No.
I agree. I mean, what they're trying to show on our bottom slide is that there is quite a change in level across the site.
Yes. Yeah.
And what they've opted to do is have change in level on each dwelling, rather than block of 3, change block of 4, which Yeah, I think it's probably a better way of doing it. And you get that rhythm that you get with the traditional terraced house. Yeah, I look forward to it. I see they've amended because the stores, the bin stores and the air heating stores, they've amended those now such that you actually got room to park the car. But I do know that they are still avoiding showing cars on the scheme.
Yeah.
Because everybody,
Well,
I'm not going to have
That is the future.
Well, the idea is you live close to town.
You don't all have your own car.
You don't need
They
a car.
do.
Of course, inevitably people build. Some of those little ones with gables remind me a bit of St Andrews.
Can we just go to the side plan?
I don't even know what to mean.
I know.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. The one of the comments that Historic England made is the whole relationship between the engine house and the bottom left hand corner, the bonded warehouse for that car parking. And I quite agree that that landscaping needs to be handled a lot better than that. The other element, which we highlighted, apart from the curvature of the building, is the triangle where the hydraulic crane is going to be repositioned there. We've got a keyhole effect through there, and we've asked if that block, the small block that sits back there, would have some central key element to it that actually made it a bit more of a statement to see the sequence of views from the bond warehouse through the development. That's not been incorporated.
Yeah. There's not a lot of open space in it, Paul, is there?
There's not
That triangle would have been ideal for a bit of open space.
there's shared gardens between. It's a shared space between both. And so there's no objection to I make that comment about the nothing particularly.
Take notes from each section. Is there an overarching one you'd like to? Or
I
are you
think
happy with
the overarching one is that we are very supportive of the proposals being put forward. We have reservations about the arches and the gable faces Frygate. We have reservations about the link between the bonded warehouse and the engine house. I think that sums it up.
Mhm.
So in writing these up, would you, in terms of the response, would you like us to put your summary statements
For each other.
for each element,
Please,
and
yeah.
then put a broad?
Over,
We may send it to you just
Yeah,
to
no,
clarify.
that's
so
fine.
you've covered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was it number? No, so, any more comments? No? Okay, so thank you very much.